How we use the mind? Do we use the mind correctly, or are we slaves to it? We have control over it, or she controls us. What is the correct way to handle our mind, our thoughts?
What is the mind really? How differs from the brain?
The mind is not the same as the brain. Those who suppose that are totally wrong. The mind is energy, subtle. The brain is the physical part into the skull. It has been demonstrated in many parapsychology experiments. The brain is not the mind. The mind can become independent of matter. Many subjects in hypnotic state have been able to inform with details about events, people, and situations that during their hypnotic trance were happening to remote distances. Scientists have been able to verify after those experiments the reality of those information, the reality of the facts, the accuracy of the events. We can really say that the mind can travel through time and space regardless of the brain to see and hear things that happen in distant places.
If that is so, what are thoughts? Where do they come from? From the mind or brain?
Thought is a function of the mental body or the energy of the mind. Man can think without physical brain independently of brain matter. This is already demonstrated in the scientific laboratories where incarnate entities were materialized.
So, what is more powerful, the brain or mind?
The brain is governed by the mind, but the mind is not governed by the brain. The brain is the instrument of emotions and consciousness, but does not produce emotions or awareness. It is the mind that produces emotions and consciousness. The reality of extrasensory perceptions is already absolutely demonstrated. This is possible because the mind is not locked in the limited circumference of the skull, but the brain is limited by the skull.
So, what is the purpose of the brain?
The brain does not think. Who thinks is the mind. The brain is just the instrument of the mind, but it is not the mind. The brain is made to perceive thought, but it is not thought. It is like a musical instrument or a radio. The mind can play anything in the musical instrument or on the radio of the brain.
This means that our thoughts can come from anywhere or go anywhere. They do not have to be limited by the brain or skull.
You can see it in your own experience. The sphere of thought where man lives could never be locked inside the limited circumference of the skull. If there was such a man, he would, of course, be the most unfortunate man in the world. A man with the thought enclosed among the skull could not see or perceive internal worlds.
I understand now. So, if the mind is energy, there must be a way to handle it well, right?
All human beings can learn to handle their mind correctly. The conscience wrapped in the mind could voluntarily travel in space and even at the same time as the great seers of the past did. However, it is urgent to know how and why the mind works.
I agree. A lot has been written about the importance of learning how to use the mind correctly.
Yes. When you know the various operations of it, you can control it. And this becomes a useful and perfect instrument and a wonderful vehicle through which we can work for the benefit of humanity. However, a realistic system is needed if we truly want to know the potential of the human mind. For these times, many issues for the control of the mind abound. There are those who think that certain artificial exercises can be magnificent for the control of their mind. But how does it work? Why does it work? For example, we throw a stone to a lake, we will see that waves are formed. These are the water-lake reaction against the stone. Similarly, if someone tells us an ironic word, this word reaches mind and mind reacts against such a word. Then the conflicts come. This is the nature of the mind. How to handle those conflicts? Everyone is in trouble. Everyone lives in conflicts, but people do not know how to handle them. I have carefully observed the discussion tables of many organizations, schools, etc. They do not respect each other. Why? Because they don't respect themselves. See it yourself. Note a Senate, a Camera of Representatives, or simply a school table. If someone says something, another feels alluded to. He gets angry and says something worse. They quarrel with each other and end in great chaos. The members of the board of directors. This That each of them's mind reacts against the impacts of the external environment is very serious.
Yes, I have already noticed it. It often occurs for these times. And how one does to handle that problem that is becoming very common for these times.
One really has to appeal to introspective psychoanalysis to explore it properly. It is necessary to recognize ourselves a little more within the intellectual. For example, why do we react to the word of a fellow man? Under these conditions, we are always victims. If someone wants us to be happy, just give us some pats on the shoulder and tell us some kind words. If someone wants to see us disgusted, it would be enough to tell us some unpleasant words. So, where is our true intellectual freedom? Which is it? Do we depend specifically on others? We are slaves. Our psychological processes depend exclusively on other people. We do not comment in our psychological processes, and this is terrible. Can such a mind serve something if everyone has the right to command in us? So where is our intellectual freedom? Which is it?
Yes, I have seen many times that we ended up doing things that we did not want to do. How we got control of our minds, of our life.
It is clear that we have to become more and more independent of the mind. For this, we should not identify with the mind. We must observe her, but not identify with her. Thus we will separate from the mind. But why should we do this? The mind is a dungeon, a prison where we are all prisoners. We need to evade that jail if we really want to know what freedom is. That freedom that is not time. That freedom that is not of the mind. First of all, we must consider the mind as something that is not from being. People, unfortunately very identified with the mind, says I am thinking and feels being mind. Humanity has lost the correct way to use the mind. There are schools that are dedicated to strengthening the mind, give courses by correspondence, teach to develop mental strength, etc. But all that is absurd. It is not fortifying the bars of the prison where we are involved. What we need is to destroy these bars to know true freedom. As I have said, this is not of time. As long as we are imprisoned by the intellect, we will not be able to experience true freedom. The mind itself is a very painful prison. To date, no man has been known to be happy with the mind. The happiest moments we have all had in life have always been in the absence of the mind. For example, when one fell in love or saw a beautiful child or a sunset or sunrise or any other moment that gave us happiness. It was an instant, yes, but one we will never be able to forget in life. In that second, we knew what happiness was, but this only lasted a second. The mind does not know what happiness is. It is a prison. We must learn to master the mind, to tame not the others but our own, if we want to become independent of it. Let us remember the divine Master Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey on Palm Sunday. That donkey is the mind that must be subdued. We must ride the donkey, not let it ride us. Unfortunately, people are victims of the mind because they do not know how to ride the donkey. The mind is a very clumsy donkey and must be mastered if we truly want to ride it.
Why is identification with the mind not good for us?
The mind itself is the ego. It is urgent to destroy the ego so that the mental substance can be of transcendent utility. The ego uses mental energy to manifest itself. If the ego is destroyed, then mental energy, mental substance, is free to experience real beauty, real bliss. The important thing is to free oneself from that clumsy mind and, being free from it, learn to move in the world of pure spirit without the mind. Knowing how to live in that current of sound is beyond the mind and is not of time. In the mind there is ignorance. Real wisdom is not in the mind. It is beyond the mind. The mind is ignorant, and that is why it falls into so many grave errors. Those who make mental propaganda, those who promise mental powers, who teach others to dominate the mind of another, etc. How foolish they are. The mind has made no one happy. True happiness is far beyond the mind. One cannot come to know happiness until one becomes independent of the mind. In the 49 departments of the subconscious mind, all and each of the psychological aggregates are hidden, to become independent of that mind. Ego is important to know the real, not to know it intellectually or as a concept, but to experience the real.
And you have truly said that the mind is the ego. Can you explain this a little more?
Yes, of course. In the world there are many speakers who amaze with their eloquence, but there are few people who know how to listen. Knowing how to listen is very difficult. Few are truly the people who truly know how to listen. When the master or the lecturer speaks, the audience seems to be very attentive, as if following every word of the speaker in detail. Everything gives the idea that they are listening, that they are on alert. But in the psychological background of each individual, there is a secretary who translates every word of the speaker. This secretary is the I, the me, the myself. The job of this secretary is to misinterpret, mistranslate the words of the speaker. The I translates according to its prejudices, preconceptions, fears, pride, anxieties, ideas, memories, etc., etc., etc. The students in the school, the individuals who together make up the audience that listens, are not really listening to the speaker. They are listening to themselves. They are listening to their own ego, which is not willing to accept the real, the true. When the mind is conditioned by memory, it only repeats what it has accumulated. The mind, conditioned by the experiences of so many yesterdays, can only see the present through the cloudy lenses of the past. Crude, rough, deteriorated, degenerated minds never know how to listen, never know how to discover the new. Those minds only understand in a mistaken way the absurd translations of that satanic secretary called I, myself, ego.
What is the way to listen to others?
If we want to know how to listen, if we want to learn to listen to discover the new, we must live according to the philosophy of the momentary. We must learn to live from moment to moment, without the prejudices and preconceptions acquired in the past. We must learn to see life with an open mind. Children and young people have more elastic, ductile, ready, alert minds, etc. Many children and young people enjoy asking their parents and teachers about such and such things. They want to know something more, they want to know. And that's why they ask, they observe. They see certain details that adults despise or do not perceive as the years go by. As we get older, the mind crystallizes little by little. The minds of the elderly are fixed, petrified. It no longer changes, not even with cannonballs. It becomes urgent for teachers in charge of forming the personality of students to study the mind very thoroughly so that they can intelligently guide the new generations.
How can we learn the art of listening? Because it is clear that most of us do not know how to listen to others.
The mind is the worst enemy of love. In the super-civilized countries, love no longer exists because the minds of people only smell of factories, bank accounts, gasoline, and celluloid. There are many bottles for the mind, and the mind of each person is very well bottled. Some have their minds bottled in jealousy, in hatred, in the desire to be rich in good social position, in pessimism, in attachment to certain people, in attachment to their own sufferings, in their family problems, etc. People love to bottle their minds. Rare are those who really decide to break the bottle to pieces. We need to free the mind, but people like slavery. It is very rare to find someone in life who does not have their mind well bottled. Teachers should teach their students all these things. They should teach the new generations to investigate their own minds, to observe them, to understand them. Only in this way, through in-depth understanding, can we prevent the mind from crystallizing, freezing, bottling. The only thing that can transform the world is what is called love. But the mind destroys love. We need to study our own mind, observe it, investigate it deeply, understand it truly. Only in this way, only by becoming masters of ourselves, of our own mind, will we kill the killer of love and be truly happy.
What can we do to regain love in our life, in our family, in our relationships?
We must end the I, the me, the ego, so as not to lose the child of love. The I is a bundle of memories, appetites, fears, hatreds, passions, experiences, selfishness, envy, greed, lust, etc., etc., etc. Only by understanding each defect separately, only by studying it, observing it directly, not only in the intellectual region, but also at all the subconscious levels of the mind, does each defect disappear. We are dying from moment to moment. In this way and only in this way we achieve the disintegration of the I. Only by eliminating the I do we regain love. Another thing we must avoid is the bad habit of comparing. The mind has the bad habit of comparing. Man compares one girlfriend to another. The woman compares one man to another. The teacher compares one student to another as if all his students did not deserve the same. Really, comparison is abominable. Whoever contemplates a beautiful sunset and compares it to another does not really know how to understand the beauty that is before their eyes. Where there is comparison, there is no true love. The father and mother who truly love their children never compare them to anyone. They love them and that's all. The husband who truly loves his wife never makes the mistake of comparing her to anyone. He loves her and that's all. The mind divided by the battling of opposites is not capable of understanding the new. It becomes petrified. The mind has many depths, regions, subconscious terrains, nooks and crannies. But the best thing is the essence, the consciousness. And it is in the center when dualism ends, when the mind becomes whole. Serene, quiet, deep when it no longer compares, then the essence awakens, the consciousness. And when the essence awakens, it gives us true and eternal bliss.
What signs would show us that our mind has begun to behave correctly?
The correct behavior of the mind implies analysis, meditation, and comprehension. There is no need to accept anything dogmatically. It is urgent to investigate, analyze, inquire, and comprehend. When comprehension is full, acceptance is unnecessary. It is no use filling our heads with intellectual information. If upon leaving school we do not know how to think and continue as living automatons like machines, repeating the same routine of our parents, grandparents, and grand-grandparents, etc. All our schools and colleges only fill us with information that we don't know how to handle, how to use. So we end up accepting or rejecting. And that acceptance or rejection of any doctrine or concept reveals a lack of mental maturity. When we reject or accept something, it's because we haven't comprehended. Where there is comprehension, acceptance or rejection is superfluous. The mind that believes, the mind that doesn't believe, the mind that doubts is an ignorant mind. The path of wisdom is not about believing or not believing or doubting. The path of wisdom is about inquiring, analyzing, meditating, and experiencing. The truth is the unknown. From moment to moment, the truth has nothing to do with what one believes or ceases to believe, nor does it have anything to do with skepticism. The truth. It's not a matter of accepting something or rejecting it. The truth is a matter of experiencing, living. Understanding all the effort of the teachers must, in the final analysis, lead the students to the experience of the real, of the true. Only through the path of love can we reach objective consciousness and objective knowledge. It is necessary to understand the complex problem of the mind if we truly want to travel the path of love.